Good morning, everybody, and thank you for attending today's Rural Business Development Grant webinar. Before we get started today, please make sure that everybody has themselves muted to keep the background noise to a minimum. There is a chat feature that allows you to send questions you may have during the presentation. At the end, we will be having a Q&A where you can use the raise your hand feature and unmute yourself to ask a question, and we'll make sure that everybody's questions in the chat feature are also answered. Today's webinar will be recorded and made available along with the presentation materials. So to get started today, I would like to introduce the West Virginia Rural Development State Director, Ryan Thorn, to make some opening remarks. Ryan?
Good morning, and thank you, Abby, and good morning, everyone, and thank you for taking time out of your Thursday morning to learn more about the Rural Business Development Grant Program through USDA Rural Development. This program is probably one of our most flexible when it comes to economic and workforce development. It's rather popular. We usually are always oversubscribed due to the popularity of the program. But again, it's very flexible for community, economic, and workforce development projects. At this point, the amount of funding, we currently don't have a grasp on what the state allocation will be for the program this year. But in years past, the sweet spot on these programs are usually, or on these applications that we fund, are usually between $50,000 and $100,000. Abby will share a lot of good information, so please take notes. And as was mentioned, this call will be recorded and the information will be shared, and the information will include all the requirements to submit your application along with the criteria for scoring. So please pay close attention to that scoring criteria. It's pretty straightforward. But again, thank you for your interest in rural development, for your interest in the Rural Business Development Grant Program. And I will kick it back
not at school today.
to Abby to kick us off. So thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Ryan. And I just want to make a quick another announcement to make sure that you keep yourself muted during the presentation, so we just keep down on that background noise. So today we're going to talk about the Rural Business Development Grant. And this year, the applications are due on February 28th of 2025. To submit those applications, you can do that via email to myself or to Jennifer Manning, or you can email them to our state office at the address on the screen. Those do have to be delivered by the deadline of 4:30 on the 28th. We cannot take anything that is postmarked but not received on the 28th. So the objective of the RBDG program is to support targeted technical assistance, training, and activities that are leading to the expansion of small businesses in rural areas and rural businesses that have 50 employees or less and $1 million in gross revenue or below. And so all of West Virginia is considered rural with the 2020 census, so everyone in the state is eligible. Some key priorities that are being targeted with this year and the administration is to reduce climate population, ensuring all rural residents have equitable access to our programs, and to help rural communities recover economically through market opportunities. And then there is a website down here that you can go to that goes into more detail on those priorities as well. So who can apply? So nonprofits are our biggest applicants, but towns, communities, state agencies, institutions of higher education, and rural cooperatives can also apply. So if you're a for-profit business, you are not eligible for RBDG, although you can be assisted by RBDG if one of these eligible applicants do apply. So to highlight ineligible uses of funding real quick. We cannot do any costs of preparing the application that you will submit, any expenses that have incurred prior to submitting the application, any political activities, We can't pay judgment or debt that is owed to the U.S., and pass-through grants are ineligible. So we want to make sure that we do avoid those. After the webinar today, if you're interested in applying, you can send me an email and I will send you this application toolkit that we have put together. It is a comprehensive toolkit that has everything that you're going to need for a complete application, along with the forms that are required. To get started, you are required to have an active SAM registration to apply and receive funds through the RBDG. It is a free service, so if you get any emails or have anything to say, let me set this all up for you for $500, avoid that. This is a free service, but I do recommend that you start getting your SAM registration as soon as possible, as that sometimes can take several weeks. As part of the application, we also are required to do what we call an intergovernmental review, as well as a SHPO letter, or also known as the State Historic Preservation Office. For the intergovernmental review, that is online now, and this is a screenshot of their website that you go on and submit information based on your application, and they will then send you a letter back. For the SHPO side, you will send a letter, which we do have a sample in the application toolkit. You'll send that to the SHPO office, and they have 30 days to respond with their letter. The SHPO letter is really only required if you are doing construction-based projects. Technical assistant projects are not required to send letters to SHPO. So when you apply, you have the option of applying as an enterprise or an opportunity grant. And to make you confused, an opportunity grant can be an enterprise grant, but an enterprise can't be an opportunity. So if I didn't confuse you enough, here's a list of projects that can be under enterprise. So we can use that for acquiring or developing any type of land, buildings, buying equipment. We can help with streets, roads, or parking areas, even utility extensions or water supplies, providing technical assistance, even establishing revolving loan funds. And we can create and operate any rural distance learning programs that are going to provide training opportunities to potential employment or job advancements, but those do have to be to adult students, not minor students. Now, for an opportunity grant, that is more global in nature. So we're looking at the broad spectrum there, where we're going to analyze business opportunities for small, emerging, or even large businesses. We can identify and provide trainings to entrepreneurs, conduct leadership development, establish training centers, or conduct technical assistance or area-wide planning activities. And the area-wide hits that global in nature. The kicker for opportunity grants is that only 10% of our state allocation can be used for opportunity grants. So there is a smaller pot of money for the opportunity side. When you're completing your application, don't forget the appendices. That is where you're going to be submitting all of your supporting documentation. This is where you're going to get all of your points from scoring and max out at your scoring criteria. So you want to make sure that you submit all of that documentation that we'll go over, not just filling out the toolkit. So in Appendix A are what we call the organizational documents. And this for nonprofits are going to be your bylaws, articles of incorporation, your tax exempt letter, as well as your certificate of good standing. If you're a public body, just evidence of your legal organization and a statute that created your entity, which I know for some towns that have been around for a long while might seem odd, but we do ask that that is submitted. For Appendix B, this is going to be your financials. And so we're looking that 3 years of financial statements are submitted, and you must show a positive net worth. That is in the regulations. So if you are showing a negative net worth, you're going to be ineligible as an organization. We cannot accept tax returns or bank statements for this section. If you have not been established for 3 years, that is okay. Please submit your current financials and any other years of financials that you may have on hand. Appendix C are your letters of support. Now, these are important because the letters of support actually count as 2 different scoring criteria. So this is going to be letters from small and emerging businesses that are going to commit to seeking the proposed project's assistance. And so that means not just a general support letter saying that, hey, this project is great, we support it. We're looking that these letters are from the businesses that are going to be directly impacted by your program and utilizing the project that you're applying for. The letter should also state if, because of this project, if they're going to be creating or saving any jobs. And so those numbers specifically do need to be mentioned in the letters to be able to get credit for those jobs. I'll also state on these letters of support, while congressional letters of support are great and we like to see, that our congressmen are backing these projects, those letters are not eligible to receive any points. Appendix D is the applicant experience. So this is going to be the resumes and documentation of all of the staff and consultants that are going to be working on this project. We need to see that they have the experience to be able to run this project successfully. And so any documentation outside of resumes that you have is also welcome. Appendix E is the matching funds. So this is going to be the evidence of availability of matching funds. So this is going to be for both your cash match as well as in kind. So for a cash match, this might be a bank statement or a letter from a third party, as well as maybe a letter from your board president stating the cash has been set aside for the project. And then in kind. So that is either going to be a breakdown of individuals that will be providing in-kind services to the project, or letters from those individuals or third parties stating the work that they will be doing as an in-kind match for the project. And then the last appendix is F, which will be all of the federal forms that aren't located in your application toolkit that will be sent over to you. If you have any questions on them or how to fill those out, please feel free to reach out, as those can sometimes be cumbersome. So now I'm going to go over the scoring, which, like Ryan mentioned, the most important part, and this is where your supporting documentation really comes in handy for some of these sections. So the first part is the leveraging. And so this is basically what match you're committing to the project versus how much of rural development's grant funds will be part of it. You will max out at 30 points if your project is less than 20% of rural development grant. And if the grant is 75% or more of the project, that is where you'll be receiving 0 points. Economic distress is the next section. This section and the next slide, unfortunately, you don't need to submit any documentation. This is just based on your location in the service area of your project, which we know that you can't help where you're located, so that might have a significance on how you score. But just know that the first section is trauma. So this is if you have a natural disaster designated by FEMA in the last 3 years. Economic distress is if an employer or military base has left the servicing area, and so you have 20% or more loss in total jobs. Long-term poverty will receive 10 points. That's going to be if you're a persistent poverty county, for example. And long-term population decline. So we're going to look at the last 3 decennial census data and see if you have been having a consistent population decline in your service area to receive these points. Next is going to be your population. So this is going to be based on the largest eligible community in your servicing area. You will max out if that is under 5,000 in population. And if it's between 15 and 25,000, you'll receive 5 points. Anything above 25,000 will not receive any points. The unemployment is going to be the unemployment rate based on your total service area. You will maximize your points if that exceeds the state rate by 25% or more. And if you're equal to or less than the state rate, you will not receive any points in this section. And lastly, here is the median household income. So this is going to be your proposed project located where your median household income for the state is less than the poverty line is going to give you the max amount of points. If you're equal or greater than 85%, you will not receive any points in this section. Next up is experience. So this is where your supporting documentation comes in handy. This is where we want to check all of the resumes and documentation that you've submitted, and it is cumulative. So we are looking for 10 or more years of service to max out at 30 points. So if you have 3 years of experience, another coworker with 6 years of experience, and a third one with 4, that'll get you over 10 years. So that's how we account for your experience. You will minimize your points at 5 points if you have at least 1 year, but less than 3. And we are looking at the experience to be directly related to the purpose of the project in the application. This slide is going to be dealing with your letters of support. So your small business startup and expansion. So we're looking that you have 5 letters that will be from those small businesses that are going to directly be supported by your project and mention that. And so each letter is worth 5 points to max out at 5 letters for 25 points in this section. Now, the next section for jobs created or saved is where we're going to look into those letters to see what businesses have stated a creation or support for existing jobs in those letters. And we will total those up. And so how you get points is the number of jobs based on how much grant funds will go for each of those jobs. So if it totals out that one job will be for less than $5,000 of the grant funds, you will max out there at 25 points, and you will get 0 points if one job is 20,000. It says but less than 25, but really anything above $20,000 will receive 0 points for that. So the size of the grant, depending on what you're applying for, will also affect your score. So anything less than $100,000, you will receive the maximum 25 points. If you're going to go over 200,000, but not more than 500,000, you will receive 10 points for that. Indirect costs. So based on your budget, you will receive 5 points if you do not have any administrative or indirect costs that are going to be coming from the grant funds. If you do have administrative costs or indirect costs that you would like to be paid with grant funds, you will not receive any points for this. And then the last section is discretionary points. And this is provided by the state director or administrator and can go up to 50 points. This is only for organizations that have not ever been awarded an RBDG before. So if you are a recipient, unfortunately, you're not eligible for these points. But this is going to be justified by geographical distribution, possibly the initiatives or priority points that we spoke about earlier. And again, these can only be assigned to what we call initial grants. So for any projects that may be over 250,000, we usually don't have very many of those, but you will be under what we call Build America, Buy America. And so recipients of these rewards basically need to be getting all of their iron and steel used in the project that is produced in the United States, manufactured products to be in the United States, as well as all construction materials. If you believe you have a Build America, Buy America project, please let me know early, just so we can discuss the requirements, because there will be some monthly reports reports and updates that are due if you do have this. But like I said, most of our projects are not covered under this. And that is actually all that I had today. This is my contact information. Again, if you have any questions after today, if you would like to receive the application toolkit or anything, please feel free to email me, as well as where you can submit your application. So I'm going to open it up to spend the remaining times to answer any questions or comments that you all have as you get ready to think about a project that you would like to apply for. So I will look in the chat. I'm not seeing any questions in the chat at this time. Any raised hands? Shamiko Robinson, I see your hand raised. Go ahead with your question.
Yeah, so I had a question just about, because literally we are brand spanking new, right? We have our nonprofit status, and we're looking into creating a multi-generational center. My question is this: like, when you're having someone who literally has, and again, our board is comprised of all business owners, but when you're dealing with someone who has really no economic track record besides board members' dues, right? Do you have any recommendations on, like, how do we navigate that? Because of course we're not losing, but I mean, we're not currently actively serving customers or anything like that, or.
Right. So that is a good question. So in the financial aspect of it, you do not have to submit audited financials or anything like that. So, any type of just financial statement that you could put together that does show that you do have cash available, because this is a reimbursement grant. So basically, we're looking that, you have enough, money on hand to be able to spend the funds ahead of time, your match and the grant funds, to then be turned around and reimbursed for those. So that's especially why we're looking for a positive net worth, that, this project isn't going to put you in the hole. In terms of the experience, it does not have to be experience with the organization. So if you or your board members, any individuals that are working on the project, have experience outside of your organization, but dealing with your type of project, that experience is still going to count. So I know it's a little bit harder for the new organizations to have, that experience or that financial information. But yeah, you don't need the 3 years, just any type of financials that you've put together to show you do have a positive net worth on that. A couple of questions in the chat. I wanted to make sure that the grant is only for businesses that employ less than 50 employees. It's 50 employees or less and $1 million of gross revenue or below. So it's both of those together. But yes, that is the point of the RBDG, is not to help with the larger businesses, but what we consider small and emerging. Another question in the chat box: if an organization chooses not to include overhead or admin fees in their proposal, can they be counted as match? So yes, that's a great question. That scoring section is only considered for grant funds. So if as your match, you would like to pay for indirect fees or those admin costs, that can be part of your budget, and you will still get the 5 points on that. So great question. That's all I'm seeing in the chat box right now. Okay, one more. Will we be able to find the PowerPoint anywhere? Yes. So if you would like the PowerPoint presentation emailed to you, you can send me an email to abbey.ord@usda.gov, and I will send that out. And in a few days, we will also get the recording of today's webinar online for anybody to be able to view as well. So yes, you can email me. I don't see any questions or hand raised, but just a couple things I did want to point out. So while construction projects are more than eligible, we can disturb land, renovate buildings, anything like that. I would just want to make it clear that we are looking that the organization owns the buildings or the property. If you don't own it and you're leasing it, we are going to ask that a lease be submitted to us and that it is a long-term lease, because we do not want to be renovating a property that you don't own and you only plan to be there for a few years and leaving. So we will be looking that that lease is long-term and asking for that. Another question in the chat box, does this grant tend to open for proposals once a year? Good question. Yes, it does. The last several years, it has opened up around Thanksgiving time, and the due date has been February 28th for the last several years. So I do anticipate that to continue in the future. And so with a February 28th due date, I will say that you will likely be notified the end of June, beginning of July, if you are awarded or not, to get started on that paperwork. If you're just wondering on how long you would hear. What is the grant project completion timeline? Great question. So we will ask that you have an August 1st start date or later, and you have up to 3 years to use the funds. But be mindful of your time frame. So if it's technical assistance, which we normally see technical assistance being completed in 1 year, that you would make your time frame to be 1 year. We can do a one-time 1-year extension if you need it, but even with that extension, we cannot go past 3 years. So that is a good question. And when like I mentioned, it is a reimbursement grant. We are looking that you will spend your matching funds ahead of or at the same time as those grant funds. So we will not reimburse the final reimbursement of grant funds until all of the matching funds are spent as well. Any other questions in the chat, or anybody want to just ask? Okay, well, if there aren't any other questions, thank you for your time. Like I said, if you want to submit the application, questions, or receive today's materials, please feel free to email me. And I can get those sent out. I will be sending out, if you're on our inquiry list, I will be sending out the application package later today. But if you don't receive an email and you want it, again, just please feel free and reach out. And if you have questions on that packet once you get it, we are here to help you out. All right, I'm not seeing anything else, so